Thanks, Ikrir and Sanjay, for inviting me to discuss about one of the important issues that this part of the world is experiencing for the last couple of decades. Before I get into the business, let me put before you two caveats. Number one, I have the understanding that this audience understand what cruise missile is all about. And those who don't know, from a layman perspective, it's just like another aeroplane, unmanned aeroplane, cruises at a, it can cruise at the top, treetop level, air breathing technology, and it cruises or requires fuel till it reaches the target, which is completely different from ballistic missile. So with that introduction, and also I'll use some of the figures which are very, very not so convincing, but if you find it is exaggerated, take with a pinch of salt. Uh, for the last couple of weeks, you must be watching this kind of pictures and videos in the internet and also TV news. Russian cruise missiles hitting ISIS. And to my mind, I think this is not just the only one spectacular use of cruise missiles. There are a number of occasions when cruise missiles have been used a very phenomenal way. This is the figure where it says that starting from the World War II till Operation Iraqi Freedom 2003, the number of cruise missiles have been used around 20,000. And in comparison, around 6,000 ballistic missiles have been used during this period. This is what the equation, 3:1. And even after 2003, number of occasions cruise missiles have been used, which is not counted here. We have a wonderful discussion by my previous speakers about about nuclear weapons, and also I acknowledge the fact that ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons remains credible threat to the international discourse, but that's not the only contingency that the world is facing. In this context, I want to bring the cruise missile discourse. A combination of nuclear weapons, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles actually complicates the missile defense scenario or missile defense system. One simple example, what happened during the Operation Iraqi Freedom. The Iraqi forces fired a few ballistic missiles which were successfully intercepted by United States forces. But they couldn't really intercept a few primitive cruise missiles used by the Iraqi forces. And that's the scenario. And that's the reality, in fact. Look at the trend, how it is evolving. The graphs that I showed in the first two slides actually gives an impression that cruise missiles have been and will remain as a preferred weapon system in different occasions. And largely because the system is versatile, it is actually evolving in a very, very bright way. Different technological innovations in different spheres of the missile is giving a promising picture to nations those who are interested in, particularly innovations in navigation system, guidance, propulsion, and war and airframe, which phenomenal technological evolutions have taken place, and this trend is likely to continue in a better way in the future. Also, to some of the countries, this gives a kind of very cost-effective weapon system. Some of the studies have been undertaken which says that within the price of the one or two fixed-wing aircrafts, you can buy around 30 to 40 off-the-shelf rudimentary cruise missiles, and that's the figure. If that is to be believed, you can imagine how the developing countries are considering cruise missile as a poor man's arsenal or poor man's air force. It is specifically suitable also for the WMD use, particularly the chemical weapons and biological weapons. Cruise missiles are very suitable vehicles. From subsonic, and if you look at the trend, the evolution of the missile, it is moving from subsonic stage to supersonic, and maybe after a few years you'll find most of the countries will have hypersonic versions, and already some of the countries are into that business. And also cruise missile provide that option of a surprise attack. When you talk in the context of nuclear weapons, it gives a very zero warning. Because of its profile, the way it is stealth features are embedded into the structure, and also because of its low profile, low trajectory that it can fly, that becomes very difficult for detection system to detect the flight path of the cruise missiles. And therefore, it stresses the missile defense system. From a political angle, if you look at number of poor countries, those who are developing countries, they prefer to go for a cruise missile because it gives a kind of disproportionate value to their possession. And that's why more number of countries are looking for, in the third world country, particularly the developing countries, they are looking for cruise missiles. So far the trend, if you look at in terms of number, there are 130 types of cruise missiles available in 75 countries of the world. And 19 are producers, and 13 of them export to all other countries. And more than 70 countries have deployed over 75,000 of cruise missiles of different varieties. And as I talked about, the spectacular use by the developed countries like United States in the Gulf War, in the Kosovo crisis, in Afghanistan, are also what we are seeing today by Russia. And that's one of the reasons why the developing countries are more interested in cruise missile acquiring. In terms of legal aspect, there is a regime, missile technology control regime, which is supposed to control missile technology proliferation. But the time the MTCR was negotiated, in fact, was not visualized how the cruise missile is going to impact the world discourse. And under the MTCR, in fact, cruise missile which are capable of 300 kilometer range with 500 kilogram of payload are allowed to trade. And therefore, within these payload and range, more number of countries are acquiring cruise missiles in the world. Also, the INF treaty, another treaty that between US and USSR at that time, now Russia, also prohibits only the land-based land attack cruise missiles. So there are wide window and opportunity for other countries to trade cruise missiles within that range. When I look into Asian figures, it seems to me that Asia is today in a very, very massive cruise missile race, and so also the Asia Pacific. Today, if you look at the number of countries in Asia who are interested into cruise missiles, or those who are having cruise missile, the number is much more than any other part of the world, and that's the reality. This graph shows the Asian cruise missile environment. Almost around 28 countries are having some sort of cruise missile capability, or they are into that business. Very soon they will acquire cruise missile into their inventory. And those boxes that are highlighted are actually the exporter countries in the world, those who export varieties of cruise missile to all other countries. Now, if you look at Asia Pacific, around 19 countries in this part of the world possess some sort of cruise missile capability or intention to go for cruise missiles. And given the political situation there, a strategic situation there, probably in the future it will be the potential theater of use of cruise missile. And that's my one assumption. Number of countries that are listed here, I'll skip those things. I'd like to highlight a few more countries that are India, Pakistan, China, Japan, Australia, Taiwan, North Korea, and South Korea have indigenous programs. Countries like Bangladesh, Brunei, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam have missile programs in a very rudimentary way, and logically they would go for a higher versions of this missile very soon. Most of the countries have subsonic versions of the missiles, and as a logical step, every country would like to go for a higher versions of it. In terms of China, we have spoken in length in the morning sessions. The graph or the figure shows that China has a relatively high priority for development, procurement, and also export of cruise missiles in the world. Particularly the Third Academy has been involved in the design and development of 20 types of cruise missiles. And to acquire large quantities of cruise missile, to saturate missile defense system by the adversary, and that's the strategy China follows. One statistic says from 2004 to 2009, China has tested a Tongfeng missile, that is a series of missiles, 32 times. And this shows how China is serious about the cruise missile business. And in the event of a maritime conflict with the US, as a hypothetical scenario if I can build, China is likely to undertake massive multi-axis anti-ship cruise missile attacks against US carrier strike groups that are present in that part of the world. Very recently, this month, there was a news report that said China flaunts cruise missile power amid South China Sea row. And there is a deployment of anti-ship cruise missiles like YJ-18, together with YJ-12 and YJ-100. And the place of deployment is unknown. These are the number of cruise missile China possesses, particularly anti-ship cruise missile versions, or also there are land attack cruise missile China has developed. In terms of Korean Peninsula, North Korea often tested Chinese versions of the HY-2 short-range land attack cruise missile into the Sea of Japan. That irritates Tokyo often. It also involved in export of missiles to and missile technologies to a number of other countries. South Korea, in return, also have a cruise missile ambition and is determined to send a strong message to North Korea, not only North Korea, even to Beijing and Tokyo. Since 2012, there are reported news that South Korea is negotiating with United States to extend the range of its cruise missiles from 300 to 1,500 kilometer range. Japan, of course, not in the race in a proper sense, but nevertheless, there are speculation that Japan, at any point of time, if situation warrants, may shift to the other side of the strategic calculation. And domestic scenario, if you observe, in 2003, the former Japanese defense minister reportedly ordered a feasibility study of Japan looking into Tomahawk cruise missiles. Also in 2009, the Liberal Democratic Party completed a kind of position paper where they were suggesting that Tokyo should now acquire cruise missiles. Reportedly also, Shinzo Abe government has quietly resumed discussions with US about the possibility of acquiring offensive capabilities. And if that is the case, probably cruise missile is one of the major options. In terms of US, of course, it's not a part of the world, but it is very much influenced the outcomes of Asia Pacific. According to Jane's Defense Review, 2 US Navy's Ohio-class cruise missile submarines like USS Michigan and USS North Carolina have been deployed in Asia Pacific to cruise disputed waters in the East China Sea, South China Sea, and Philippine Sea. And a part of that also specifically, the USS Michigan is equipped with 154 land attack cruise missiles, which were reported to be docked at Singapore's Changi Naval Base. And according to the reports, USA also plans to relocate 60% of its naval assets to the Far East by 2020. And if these reports are true, you can imagine how the Asia-Pacific cruise missile scenario is warming up. Myanmar, in our neighborhood, has also a cruise missile ambition. Bangladesh, right now, they do not have really a cruise missile program, but nevertheless, with the Chinese help, they are into the missile ambition, and logically, they will land up in cruise missile acquiring. Pakistan, we know about it, and Babar and Rad, which are also claimed to be nuclear capable, and logically they also will move towards acquiring supersonic and hypersonic versions of the cruise missiles, and China-Pakistan nexus. Then what is the problem? If Asia-Pacific into that kind of race, which way it is going to impact and what are the likely outcomes? Of course, it will represent a kind of fundamental challenge to the stability of the region because of the nature of the cruise missile technology itself. It's more and more stabilizing and destabilizing factor. Virtually, against a supersonic and hypersonic cruise missile, there is no defense. Virtually, there is no defense against a supersonic and hypersonic version of the cruise missile, and that's the reality. Countries in Asia Pacific, in fact, it has been discussed in the morning session as well, very little regional security dialogue they involve. And to that extent, there is official dialogue between US and China, of course, but that excludes Taiwan and Japan. Tokyo and Seoul also talk, but they don't talk coordinated in that manner. Talking with North Korea today is not considered so good. And only Japan, South Korea, and Australia are part of the MTCR. A lot of other countries are not part of the missile technology control regime. With nuclear-tipped cruise missile, any spark of conflict, actually, to my mind, will open up the Pandora's box. Now, India is concerned. This is the last slide I would like to focus on. Yes, whatever happens in that part of the world, India has a larger stake, and there will be a spillover effect on India. And of course, from technical point of view, if you look at spread of lethal weapon system is actually worrying India in the neighborhood particularly. At the same time, India is also concerned about how to acquire long-range cruise missiles indigenously. We have a very good partnership with Russia so far on the BrahMos missile. But by this time, we should be capable of producing long-range cruise missiles. Nirva missile, which is flight tested only twice, it's taking longer time. By this time, we should have been very capable of producing long-range cruise missiles. At the same time, to acquire also capability to defend against cruise missile threat. in the neighborhood, cruise missiles are spreading with nuclear technology, nuclear capability. At least in the country, there is a debate on ballistic missile threat and ballistic missile defense system, irrespective of the capability and the success of ballistic missile defense of India. But there is no debate in the country regarding the cruise missile threat and if India should focus on a cruise missile defense strategy as well. Lastly, of course, we have mastered the BrahMos. There is also a market potential of it. And at a certain point, even Narendra Modi highlighted about catering to immediate neighbor security needs. Now, can we think about exporting BrahMos to neighboring countries, particularly Asia Pacific? And in the morning, I think, sir, you mentioned about India becoming a non-involved power in that part of the world. Probably this is a window, whether it is negative or positive, I would like to see. This is a window where you can really cater to the needs of the neighborhood security concerns. With this, I'll conclude. Thank you.